So Fidel Castro is being mourned in some segments of the Cuban population, as his death is also celebrated by Cuban exiles in America who had to flee that country when Castro came to power in 1959. It wasn't until 1961 that the U.S. severed diplomatic relations with Havana. Our next guest interviewed the dictator back in 1996 about Cuba's relationship with the U.S.
We are protected by the United States because the United States does not want anyone to invest a penny. No one protects socialism today in Cuba more than the United States. They do not want investments in Cuba.
According to the U.S. Department of State, there are another 70 fugitives from justice in Cuba, accused of terrorism, of drug trafficking. Don't you mind, Commander?
You know more than I do, because I have not heard of 70 fugitives of the United States.
Let's talk now with the journalist who conducted that interview, Elvira Salazar, host of Elvira Live and Mega News broadcast on Mega TV. So when you got the word that Fidel Castro was dead, first thought that went through your mind?
Oh, it was new dawn for the Cuban people. A new era has begun. That was my first thought. You
really think that things will change?
Absolutely. I certainly hope so, because that's the only thing we have, hope. It's a moment of historical proportions. Trump is in power, or he will be very soon. Fidel is dead, and Raul is alone with an economy in shambles.
I lived in Miami for about 14 years, starting in the middle 80s. The hatred for Fidel Castro on the streets of Little Havana and elsewhere was visceral. But the thinking is that there is a new generation of Cuban Americans sort of taking the place of the older generation, and that they are not as anti-Fidel as their parents. Give us your take.
I'm so happy you lived here in Miami. I belong to that second generation. I was born and raised in the United States. But you know, when you grow up in exile and you see the suffering and you see the tears and you see the separation between families and you hear of the oppression and the torture and the political prisoners, your parents teach you what happened, and you still remember.
So you interviewed the man. I mean, all of those thoughts must have been very much at the forefront of your mind. This is a guy who has imprisoned his political enemies, has killed thousands of people to cling to power. Did he not understand the gravity of that? Did he not express remorse?
Well, yeah, it's true. I was the only Cuban American. It's very easy, or it's easier for Castro to have given an interview to somebody that was American or Italian, but he was talking to the enemy, so I'm very proud of that. It took me 3 years to get that interview. He didn't know whether I was going to say exactly what you were telling me, that he's a dictator and that he was torturing people. I was trying to be a journalist, and I was trying to be very much impartial and in the middle. But absolutely, I was thinking, when I was facing him, you know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of the rafters. We have thousands and thousands of people that have died or disappeared in the middle of the Florida Straits, eaten by the sharks because they are trying to escape. And those are the same rafters that are trying to get to the Florida coast today, as I'm sure you're reporting. So I did my job, but still we remember, and the streets of Miami are full of, I would say, a lot of people in Miami are celebrating that he is dead, not because he died, but because there is a new dawn for Cuba.
President Obama has extended an olive branch to Cuba, reopened diplomatic relations. You can fly an airline to Havana now legally, which you couldn't do for decades. Will any of that be undone, should any of it be undone, by the incoming Trump administration?
Well, that's why I'm telling you that we are in a historical, glorious moment. Because what Obama did was very noble. I think he really tried to reach to the Cuban people and put aside the government or the Castro brothers. President Obama knows exactly what the Castro brothers have done. But he tried to surpass that and reach a hand, or extend a hand to the Cuban people.
We'll see.
Now President Trump needs to, tell me, sorry, I just want to finish this. President Trump needs to see if he really wants to do business with the Cuban military, which is what's happening in the last 2 years.
Elvira Salazar, thank you so much.